Can you believe we are already in 2025? Like what even is going on? I know everybody says that, and I never truly feel like, oh my gosh, can you believe we're in this year? But truly, for some reason, 2025 is like, what? Like, what the hell? Like, if it's some cosmic year or something. It is so surreal. I'm also like very positive about 2025. 2024 threw us some hardballs, and by us I mean, I'm sure you guys too, but by us I mean my household. We had some crazy stuff happen, we've had some hard stuff happen, but thankfully we ended the year on a positive note with positive things happening. But the middle was really rough, and when things go like haywire in my life, I sort of step back. So if you ever want to know if there's something big or messed up happening in my life, just look to see if I'm on social media. If I'm not, then some shit is happening, okay? That's why I've been away. But it's 2025, and we are going to be talking about my favorite books of 2024. I read 124 books. 17 of these books were 5-star reads. Here are my top 5, with of course an honorable mention, because why can't I just keep it to one set of numbers? There always has to be an honorable mention on my channel. These books are in no particular order. I don't know which one is my top favorite, my number one. Maybe I won't even pick one. Maybe these will just be my top reads, and that's it. There won't be a number one. So in no particular order, we're gonna start off with Listen for the Lie. I read this one in November, so it's a fairly recent book that I read, and so it's very clear on my mind, almost. But in this one, we follow a story of 2 friends. They were out one night. I think they were like at a wedding or something. And next thing you know, they find one of them dead, and the other one, which is our main character, and I can't remember her name right now, is found a few miles away maybe, and she's all bloody and hurt. And so they bring her in, and they're like, oh my gosh, what happened? They're thinking, okay, they were both attacked. Maybe she got away, but the other one didn't. As they start investigating and researching, well, the blood that is on our main character's body is actually her best friend's blood. So she is the main suspect for the murder. This murder never gets solved, and she's sort of seen as the girl who killed her best friend. She moves away from town, but she comes back for her grandmother's birthday. Her grandmother has something up her sleeve. At the same time, there is a podcaster. He does true crime podcasts, and he has been hounding our main character to do an interview with him, and she just wants to get away from it all. I forgot to mention, she does not remember anything that happened that night. But anyways, this podcaster is in town, and he somehow gets her to agree to speak to him, and they're trying to find out what happened that night between these 2 girls, the night of the wedding. I freaking loved our main character. Even though I can't remember her name, I loved her. I remember just reading her like witty remarks, and just how tall she stood, even with the whole town. This is like a small town, even with the whole town looking at her in just a bad way. But she's honestly there for her grandmother. She loves her grandmother, and she's just there for her. So she makes face, and she shows up at this town. I just love how strong she is, how witty, how smart, how sarcastic. This is one of the most sarcastic characters I have ever met, but she honestly was such a delight to be around. I love the podcaster as well, and I love the whole podcast element that this book had to it. Absolute 5 stars. So if you have not read this one and you like a good mystery thriller, I highly recommend you read it. Obviously, I am just gonna mention them the way they are sitting here. I am gonna leave one to the end, not because it is particularly my favorite book, we already discussed this, but just because I feel like if I start talking about this book, I will not shut up. And I've already spoken about this book a few times, so we're gonna leave it for number 1 because I'm already talking a lot about it, and you guys don't even know what the book is. Another one of my favorites, funny story. Would it even be a favorites video if Emily Henry was not on it? Another one that I wanted to be on here was Empire of the Damned, Jay Kristoff's book that I read this year. He was in my favorites whenever I read Empire of the Vampire. I have an itch here, but I don't want to mess up my hair because it's salon done, and it's the only time within 6 months to a year that my hair will actually be done. And so I didn't put J. Kristoff in. I loved Empire of the Damned so much. I gave it 5 stars, but I'm like, you're just gonna have the same authors over and over again on every favorites video. But I had to, because she is a must read for me, an auto-buy author for me. I love her so much. Every book that I've read of hers has made me swoon, cry, laugh, feel. I love her writing. I love her style of romance. I have a feeling that she will always be on my favorites video. And also, it's one of the authors that when I buy their book, I read it immediately. I don't store it like the 5,000 other books that I have that I buy and I'm like, oh, I really want to read this, and then I come back and I add it in a pile and I forget about it. No, this is an author that I will buy the book and I will read it immediately. Oh, I had to take a break because the hubs called me. He needed something and I can't remember what I was saying about this. So we're just gonna get into what this book is about. So we have our 2 main characters.
Again, I can't remember their names.
We have our 2 main characters, Daphne and Miles. I swear she always writes the best male characters, in my opinion, in my eyes, for my liking, that I have ever read. Daphne has just been broken up with. She is about to get married and her fiance comes to her and says, hey, I actually fell in love with somebody else. And so we're going on vacation. We're gonna leave you here to pick up your stuff and get out. And so there's a whole storyline behind, you know, where she was living and her part in the house. Like, she would pay bills and stuff and it was their house together, but it was under his name. And so she's like, all right, well, whatever. She picks up her shit and she's looking for somewhere to live. She can't find anywhere. She bumps into Miles, which is the new girlfriend of her ex-fiance, Petra. It's her ex-boyfriend. She runs into him and he is just like this chaotic, just messy guy, and he is still mourning and grieving the loss of his relationship to Petra. But they somehow get together and they become roommates, and little by little, of course, romance ensues. I loved following our main characters. I loved Miles. I loved his just way of being and his personality. I loved Daphne as well, and just their chemistry and their dynamic and how they came to be. I mean, funny story. That's just how they talk about how they met. Funny story. But I loved the whole how they got to know each other, how they ended up together, and I loved watching Daphne grow. She had a lot of growing to do. I love this so much. I always love a good Emily Henry book. I love all of her books, and this was no exception. And I don't know if this would be my favorite. I would love to get all of her books one day and just read them back to back just to see which one is my favorite. I'm looking forward to the 2025 book. I cannot wait to see what romance she brings my way because they all make me swoon. You guys saw me read this in a vlog. You guys saw me sobbing over this book. I think about this book so much throughout the year, throughout my days. I loved it. I remember our main character, Lavira, her name, but I can't remember our other main character. We're following Lavira, sorry. Lavira. Lavira? I think I go through this in the vlog as well. I listened to the audiobook for this because sometimes these epic fantasy books sometimes these fantasy books have the most bizarre and unpronounceable names. And so I like to listen to them in audiobook, and of course, if it's going to be a chunker of a book as well, an audiobook is so much better. And I'm so glad I did because this was so good. We have Lavira, and she lives in what is known as the Dust. It's like this little camp in the middle of a desert, and nobody ever comes to this place. So the people here, it's a very small community. They all know each other. They all have their rules, and Lavira is part of this community. She is like one of the most strongest, like strong-willed, tenacious, and persevering characters that I have ever encountered. I loved her from the minute that we see her on page. She's getting into a fight. She's not taking shit from anybody. I can't remember her age at the beginning of this book, but I want to say maybe no more than 12 years old, like either 12 or below that. And if she's any older, I don't give her more than 13. But she starts off with a fight. Somebody told her something and she ain't taking no shit from nobody. They're trying to break up the fight and somebody tells her, hey, go fetch the water. This is one of her favorite things to do because she gets to get away from the community. The well is a little off the way. And as she's walking to get this water, to fetch the water, she's thinking of like how monotonous their lives are. Every day it's the same thing, the same routine, the same people. She dreams of going to the city, which she can see from, like, she could see the skyline of the city. She doesn't know how, when, why, or where, but she knows that she's going to end up in that city. She wants more from life. And these thoughts lead her to think, like, she knows that she's going to go and find water at the well, but she's hoping that one day there's some kind of change, even if it's as bad as there not being any more water. She knows that change would be horrible, and she almost wishes every time she goes to fetch the water that there is no water, just to see some change. But as she's fetching the water this time, she sees people coming, or someone is coming towards their city. And this like startles her because, again, I said at the beginning, nobody ever visits this little camp, the Dust. And the visitors that they get are not good news. They end up being taken. Half of the community gets killed, but they end up taking all the kids chained up. Anyways, these things that end up taking these kids, they get attacked as well, and these kids get rescued. And sure enough, Elvira ends up in the city. It's a whole wild ride. We also have another character that has lived inside of a room full of books his whole entire life, and he's dreaming of a life outside of these walls. Now, this room that they're in, it's a pretty big room. It has a lot of books. There's almost like a labyrinth of books. It's high up, and there's like some windows high up on this room, and he always dreams of trying to make it up there with like stairs of books to see what there is beyond. But one day he gets his wish and he gets to come out of this room, and just their stories intertwine. It was such a fantastic novel. It says here, the world has never even noticed them. That's about to change. Their stories spiral around each other across worlds and time. This is a tale of truth and lies and hearts and the blurring of one into another. A journey on which knowledge erodes certainty, and on which, though the pen may be mightier than the sword, blood will be spilled and cities burned. Loved following these two characters, loved this story. It was very unique. I mean, again, I've read fantasy. I'm not a huge fantasy reader. I mean, I love it. I love reading everything, but I don't get to it as much as I would love to. So I'm not as seasoned in the genre as I am others, but I do know that it was a unique read. I've never read anything like it before, and I loved the whole library aspect of it and books aspect of it. Just, I mean, come on, I love a good book that has any kind of bookish themed or trope in it, and this one did not disappoint. I love it so much. I haven't read book 2 yet, but I really, really want to. It was on my TBR for 2024, but many of those books did not make it into my brain. Razorblade Tears is another book I read in 2024 that left me like wowed, just because I wasn't planning on reading this book. I am so glad that I did read this. I can't remember why I picked this up. I think I was reading like pink books for February, and since this had pink in it, and I was like, you know what? I found the audiobook. I'm like, let's just do it. Let's see. Let's see what this book is all about. And let me tell you, I'm so glad. I'm so glad I read it. The hype is real. It is so good. Race is done beautifully. You end up falling in love with our main characters. One is black, one is white. Ike is our black character, our black father. But basically their sons end up being murdered, and they have to come together to find out why and who killed their boys. But again, Ike is the father of the black son. Their sons were in a relationship, and so they were estranged from their sons because neither one of them approved of their gay lifestyle. But again, Ike, he's been in prison, he's killed, he knows the rough side of life, but he's cleaned up his life. He has his own company, his own business, he's married. Other than being estranged from his son, he's turned his life around and it's going good. And then we have Buddy Lee. He is the other father of the other man in the relationship. He is white and he lives in a trailer. He likes to drink. His marriage is just down the drain and he just doesn't have anything to look forward to. And now his son, his estranged son, which he has a lot of guilt. They both do. They both carry a lot of guilt for not accepting that part of their sons. He is trying to find out. They both are. They're trying to find out who killed their boys. They have to come together and they have to get to know each other in the process. I loved their journey so much. I loved how they tackled their differences and how they got to understand one another. I loved his writing. I want to read more of his works. I do own Blacktop Wasteland, I believe is the name of the book. I really, really want to read more of his works because I like how he does the important topics in fiction. Love it so much. Coming on to my last book, we are going to pause because I'm going to talk about my honorable mention. I could not leave this video without talking about this book because Tiffany Daniel, if you have read one of her books, then you know what I'm talking about. Betty, oh my gosh, boogers, snot, tears for more than half of that book, tugging at the heartstrings. I read The Summer That Melted Everything this past summer and she has a way with words. This story was so unique as well. It had me crying because it would not be a McDaniel book without me crying. This is only my second book by her. I don't know if she has other books. I'm sure she does. I would love to check them out because on her way to being a favorite character. She's not a character, an author. The Summer That Melted Everything is about this town. We have a prosecutor and this prosecutor has a family. He is, they tell you the story of how he becomes a prosecutor, but he wants to defend the people that are abused, that are killed, especially children. And in one of his high and mighty things, he summons the devil. He dares the devil to come to his town because he will do away with anything that's evil in his town. So he's daring the devil. And a little, like, I don't know, days, a week, not that long into him making this announcement to the devil, a little boy shows up in raggedy clothes. He is lost. He runs into, or better yet, the son of the prosecutor, a little boy, runs into him and they build a friendship. But when he is asking him, where did he come from? Who is he? He's like, I was summoned here by your dad. Basically, he's the devil. Things start happening in the town. When he arrives, with his arrival, things start happening and people start pointing at him and really do believe that he is a devil. The police is looking at missing boys announcements to see if they see his picture. They're calling around. They think they know who the family is that he belongs to, but it happens to be that no, this little boy is just lost. He doesn't have a family. They can't find a family for him. So the prosecutor says, hey, I'll take him in. Apparently he believes that I called him. We'll take him in. We'll take care of him. My son and him have a friendship until we find out who he is. And the story goes from there. These two boys and their relationship and reading this little boy, like just his personality, the way he answers people sometimes, he's like very sarcastic as well. I loved it so much. It's a coming of age story and at the end it made me cry following not the little devil boy, I can't remember his name, but the son of the prosecutor, just him growing with the knowledge of who this little boy was and everything that happens. It was so, so good. And if you haven't read a McDaniel book, please either read this one or Betty. Fantastic reads. If you are a crier or an emotional person with Betty, go in with caution because it is a book that will tear you up emotionally. But Tiffany McDaniel, love her, and I love The Summer That Melted Everything so much. I could not leave, like I said, I couldn't leave this video without mentioning it because it was such a powerful and good read that I just could not leave it out. But it wasn't enough to make it to my top 5 for whatever reason. I just like these books so much. And I feel silly putting a book like that as an honorable mention when I have Buried in a Good Book, which is such a silly, silly book. I feel like The Summer That Melted Everything had so much context, so much emotion, so much so much. And then here we have this little piece of fiction that's so silly that just has brought out so much happiness that I can't even like hold it without it bringing a smile to my face. First off, I'm gonna say this is the By the Book mystery series. It has 3 books. I hate that because these cozy mysteries, they're all like 55 books deep, and here we have one that I'm just obsessed with and we only have 3 books. I need more of Tess Harlow. Harrow, not Harlow, Harrow. I need more of Tess Harrow. I need more of the sheriff. I can't remember his name in the book. I need more of Gertrude, which is Tess's daughter. I just need more of all these characters. In this first book, in all the books, basically, we're following Tess. She is a mystery thriller author. She writes books and she makes her living like that. Her marriage flopped and she's a divorced parent, and she stayed with her little daughter. Not little, I think she's like teenage years by the time that we see her. But her daughter is having a hard time with a divorce. Her dad sort of like forgets about her, doesn't call her. And she could see that even though her daughter isn't showing signs of sadness or anything, she could tell that these things bother her in her avoidance. And so she decides, she's like, hey, I have a cabin that my grandfather left me. Let's go spend some time over there. The thing is that in this cabin, there's no electricity, no water, no toilet, no nothing. It's just a freaking walls up in the middle of the Washington forest. The setting, I mean, the setting was amazing. But it's one of my favorite things because I am dying to go to the forests in Washington and just bask in the forestness and the trees, dying to go. So the setting was just amazing. I mean, that's what caught me from the synopsis when I first saw this book. First, it was the cover. Great job, Tamara Berry, on this cover. Whoever your cover artist was, I'm sure we can find it in here. It's what drew me in. I was like, what is this? It's so cute. It looks so summery. I read the synopsis and instantly I bought them. And I read this, like I devoured it the second that it came in. That's how much I wanted to read it. I had never heard anybody talk about this. I rarely hear people talk about cozy mysteries. If you guys know about cozy mysteries, content creator, readers, bibliophiles, let me know, because I rarely see people talking about cozy mysteries. I feel like the little old lady talking about cozy mysteries here and on my Instagram, and nobody wants to hear about them. Why? They're so good. They're so wholesome, and you still get a little bit of murder even though it's not in your face. Sometimes I just need a little break from all the blood and gore in my face from the extreme books that I read and the horror that I read. But anyways, she gets her daughter, they go to this cabin. The daughter is hating it because there's no Wi-Fi, no electricity, there's nothing in there. So she's like, what am I going to do? Anyways, they find body parts and the mystery starts, and she and the sheriff start a very bickering, very enemies to lovers kind of relationship. He has sort of like all the attributes that she writes a detective series, Detective Gonzalez series, and she sees a lot of Detective Gonzalez in the sheriff in Winthrop, Washington. And I just loved reading about everything. In this one, they find body pieces and they have to find out who this body belongs to and who the murderer is. There's obviously different murders in each of the books. I don't know if I said this, but I gave each one of these books 5 stars. Each one of them, the whole entire trilogy. I can't stop thinking about either one of them. They are all so fun. I want to reread the whole entire trilogy. I mean, the second that I would finish each one of the books, I wanted to start all over again from the beginning instantly. Not like, oh, I would love to reread this in the future. No, like I want to reread it now. And I'm kind of fighting the urge to reread it for 2025 because there's so many other books that I want to read, but there's this one just, I loved it so much. So that's it, you guys. Those are my top 5 with an honorable mention favorite books of 2024. Let me know what your favorite reads were for this past year. Let's chat books in the comment section down below. As usual, all these books will be linked in the description box, affiliate links. Keep that in mind. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.